Millionaire hands $500 to twins for old music box, falls to his knees when he discovers what's concealed inside. This is the story of Michael Bennett, a tech millionaire who has everything money can buy but nothing that matters. Surrounded by success, yet empty inside, he's about to discover that the true value of life isn't measured in dollars, but in connections. What would you choose, wealth without meaning or meaning without wealth? Drop a like if you've ever felt success wasn't enough. Subscribe to follow Michael's journey and comment "Music Box" if you believe some treasures can't be bought. The Seattle skyline glittered against the night sky, a perfect backdrop for the celebration taking place in Michael Bennett's penthouse. Fireworks exploded in brilliant bursts of color outside the floor-to-ceiling windows, seemingly choreographed to honor the man of the hour. Inside, the sleek, modern space was filled with the city's tech elite, the ambient lighting designed to highlight the minimalist decor rather than the notable absence of personal touches. Michael Bennett stood alone on his balcony, the cool evening air a welcome relief from the suffocating praise inside. At 39, he cut an impressive figure, tall, with carefully maintained salt and pepper hair that added gravitas without suggesting age. His tailored suit cost more than some of his employees made in a month, yet he wore it like armor rather than a symbol of success. In his hands, he held the gleaming Tech Innovator of the Year award, heavy crystal, catching the light of the fireworks. He should feel triumphant. This was the culmination of 2 decades of relentless work, of sacrificing everything for his vision. Instead, he found himself thinking, I have everything I ever wanted. So, why does it feel like nothing at all? There you are. Sarah Chen's efficient voice broke through his thoughts as she stepped onto the balcony. His executive assistant of 5 years knew everything about his schedule, but almost nothing about the man himself. The CFO of Meridian Ventures is asking for 5 minutes to discuss a potential collaboration. Michael nodded, tucking away his moment of existential doubt. I'll be right in. As he moved through his own party, Michael caught fragments of conversations, accepting congratulations with practiced humility. He gave handshakes and shoulder claps to people who knew only his professional persona, the carefully constructed image of Michael Bennett, tech visionary. Revolutionized supply chain logistics. Youngest CEO ever to. Stock price doubled since the acquisition. The words washed over him without landing. Standing at the impromptu podium his team had arranged, Michael delivered the speech Sarah had prepared. He'd made a few tweaks, he always did, but the template remained the same. Gratitude to his team, excitement for the future, brief anecdote about perseverance, self-deprecating joke. And so, while I appreciate this recognition, the real innovation happens when we collaborate. Here's to breaking new ground together. Applause, raised glasses, success. Later, as the party wound down, Michael found himself near a group of younger developers. They weren't talking about stock options or market penetration, but about their weekend plans. My daughter's soccer tournament is finally happening after being rained out twice, one said, showing photos on his phone. We just finished the nursery, another replied, his face lighting up. The twins are due in 6 weeks. I'm terrified and can't wait. Michael felt a strange hollowness expand inside him. He had achieved every goal on his checklist: build revolutionary product, secure funding, go public, expand globally, become industry leader, but had never created a checklist for anything else. No partner waited for him after the spotlight faded. No children's artwork brightened his refrigerator door. Even his parents, supportive but distant adoptive figures, had passed away years ago with a relationship that had never evolved beyond polite holiday calls. Mr. Bennett? Sarah approached again, tablet in hand. Your car is waiting downstairs, and I wanted to confirm plans for your birthday next month. The PR team thinks a charity gala would generate positive press, especially if we tie it to educational initiatives. Michael stared at her blankly. 40. He was turning 40 in 4 weeks, and his celebration would be a strategic PR move because there was no one to throw him a real party. I'll think about it, he said finally, an answer he never gave. Back in the silent emptiness of his penthouse after the last guest departed, Michael loosened his tie and poured himself a scotch worth more than most people's monthly grocery budget. His cleaning service had already removed any evidence of the party, restoring the space to its impersonal perfection. Sitting at his desk, he opened his laptop to review tomorrow's meetings, but found himself distracted by a news alert. He clicked, expecting market analysis, but instead saw a feature on America's best-preserved small towns. Portland, Maine, his hometown, had been named to the list. The article showed photos of the historic downtown and the weekend market he remembered from childhood. The same cobblestone streets where he'd once delivered newspapers. The harbor where he'd dreamed of bigger things. The coastal town he'd fled at 18, determined never to look back. Something stirred inside him, a feeling he couldn't immediately identify. Nostalgia, curiosity, longing for a simpler time before success had become his prison. Without analyzing it further, analysis was, after all, what he did best, Michael picked up his phone and called Sarah. "Clear my schedule for the next week," he said, the decision crystallizing as he spoke, "and book me on the first flight to Portland tomorrow morning." "Portland, Oregon?" she asked, confusion evident in her voice. "Maine," he replied. "Portland, Maine." For the first time in longer than he could remember, Michael felt something that resembled anticipation. Or maybe it was simply the prospect of feeling something at all. Michael's rented luxury SUV felt conspicuously out of place as he navigated the narrow streets of downtown Portland. He'd chosen something understated by his standards, but the gleaming black vehicle still drew curious glances from locals walking along the leaf-strewn sidewalks. Fall had transformed the small coastal town into a canvas of amber, crimson, and gold, so different from Seattle's sleek glass and steel. He drove slowly down Main Street, experiencing the peculiar sensation of seeing a place simultaneously through the eyes of the boy who left and the man who returned. Some storefronts remained exactly as he remembered, the hardware store with its faded awning, the bookshop with stacks visible through warped glass windows. Others had transformed, the old pharmacy, now an artisanal coffee shop, his favorite comic book store replaced by a boutique selling handcrafted jewelry. The town had changed, yet remained fundamentally itself, perhaps what made it worthy of that best-preserved designation. Michael, however, had changed completely. Parking near the harbor, he stepped out into the crisp autumn air, instinctively tugging his designer jacket closer. He dressed more casually than usual, dark jeans, cashmere sweater, Italian leather boots, but still stood out among the practical flannels and weathered denim of the locals. He walked without a specific destination, letting muscle memory guide him. The scent of salt air mixed with fallen leaves triggered forgotten memories, riding bikes with foster siblings, delivering papers in the pre-dawn hours, his first summer job scraping barnacles off boats. Michael paused outside Pete's Diner, a humble establishment with steamed windows and a hand-painted sign. He recalled counting quarters on its counter, savoring the luxury of a hot chocolate he'd saved weeks to afford. On impulse, he pushed open the door, a bell announcing his entrance. The lunch crowd created a comfortable buzz of conversation, the air rich with the aroma of coffee and fried potatoes. Michael slid onto a stool at the counter, feeling strangely self-conscious. "Be right with you," called a voice from the kitchen before a man in his 70s emerged, wiping his hands on a well-worn apron. Pete Hansen had aged, his formerly dark hair now completely white, lines etched more deeply around his eyes, but his energetic movements and ready smile remained unchanged. Pete placed a menu before Michael before looking up. His eyes narrowed slightly, then widened in recognition. "Well, I'll be damned. Michael Bennett, as I live and breathe." He extended a hand across the counter. "Hardly recognized you without the paper route bag." Michael shook the offered hand, surprised by the warmth that spread through him at being remembered. "Hello, Mr. Hansen." "It's still Pete to you, son." The older man chuckled. "Though I guess you're not delivering my paper anymore, unless you came back to run the Portland Gazette." "Just visiting," Michael replied, strangely reluctant to mention his actual career. "What'll you have? Menu's mostly the same, except we've got those fancy avocado things the tourists like now." Michael ordered coffee and the grilled cheese sandwich that had once been a rare treat. As Pete called the order to the kitchen, other diners glanced Michael's way, some with the curious look of those trying to place a familiar face. "Heard you did real well for yourself out west," Pete commented, sliding a mug of steaming coffee toward him. Some kind of computer business, right? Michael nodded, oddly touched that news of his success had reached his hometown. Something like that. As he ate, Pete shared updates on the town, the new harbor renovation, last year's record tourism season, his granddaughter taking over the diner's bookkeeping. When Michael reached for his wallet afterward, Pete waved him off. "This one's on the house. Bennett boys always had good appetites." Michael started to insist, but something in Pete's expression stopped him. This wasn't about money. It was about connection, about acknowledging shared history. "Thank you," he said instead. After lunch, Michael continued to the harbor overlook, a simple wooden platform extending toward the water. He'd spent countless hours here as a teenager, dreaming of escaping to bigger places. Now, watching fishing boats bob gently against the backdrop of scattered islands, he wondered why he'd been so desperate to leave. A memory surfaced suddenly. His foster mother, Nancy, sitting beside him on this very bench after his high school graduation. "Your birth mother wanted you to have opportunities she couldn't provide," she'd said, squeezing his shoulder. "She made the hardest choice out of love. Remember that?" He'd nodded, 18 and impatient to begin his life elsewhere, not particularly interested in the mother who'd given him up. Now, at 39, he found himself wondering about her for the first time in years. Had she stayed in Portland? Had she ever regretted her decision? As the afternoon light began to fade, turning the harbor to burnished gold, Michael made another impulsive decision. He called the boutique hotel, the converted library that had once been his sanctuary, and extended his reservation through the weekend. He wasn't sure what he was looking for in Portland, but something pulled at him to stay, a feeling he couldn't articulate but wasn't ready to dismiss. For a man who had built his fortune on data-driven decisions, this intuitive pull was foreign territory. Perhaps, he thought as he walked back to his rented SUV, that was precisely why he needed to follow it. Saturday morning dawned bright and clear, the kind of perfect fall day that drew tourists and locals alike to Portland's weekend market. Michael woke early, a habit formed through years of pre-dawn conference calls and crisis management. After a run along the harbor, earning curious glances from fishermen preparing their boats, he showered and headed downtown. The market occupied the old town square and spilled into adjacent streets, transformed by white canopies, colorful displays, and the vibrant energy of commerce. Farmers arranged heirloom apples in wooden crates, artisans showcased handcrafted pottery, and food vendors filled the air with the aromas of baked goods and simmering cider. Michael wandered without purpose, enjoying the anonymity of being just another visitor. No one sought his opinion or approval here. No one tracked his movements or analyzed his words. The weight of constant performance lifted from his shoulders as he browsed locally made maple syrup and hand-woven textiles. Near the center of the market, a small antique stall caught his attention, not for its merchandise, but for its unlikely proprietors. Two children, no more than 8 or 9 years old, earnestly attended to customers, while an elderly woman organized items in the background. The girl, with auburn braids and wire-rimmed glasses that seemed too large for her small face, recited carefully practiced descriptions of the merchandise. "This silver letter opener is from the 1920s, she informed a browsing couple. "It's engraved with real Art Deco designs." Her brother, clearly her twin, though not identical, managed the money box with solemn concentration, counting change twice before handing it over. His sandy hair fell into his eyes as he leaned forward, freckles standing out against his serious expression. Michael found himself smiling, truly smiling, for the first time since arriving in Portland. Their earnestness, so at odds with their youth, stirred something in him, a distant memory of his own childhood determination, perhaps. He circled the market twice more, but found himself drawn back to their stall each time. The elderly woman, their grandmother, he presumed, moved slowly with a cane, occasionally wincing as she rearranged heavier items. The boy watched her protectively, jumping to help whenever she reached for something on a higher shelf. "We have a special items section," the girl was explaining to a customer as Michael approached again. "Those help pay for Grandma's medical treatments." She gestured to a small table with more carefully arranged objects, a vintage pocket watch, a pair of silver candlesticks, a delicate porcelain figurine. The customer began aggressively haggling over a set of antique cufflinks, suggesting a price well below the marked value. The boy stepped forward, his young face suddenly older in its resolve. "Sir, our prices are fair for the quality," he said firmly. "We researched everything." The man huffed and walked away. The twins exchanged a look of quiet disappointment before straightening the display. From behind them, the grandmother watched Michael with an unreadable expression. Something in her gaze made him feel assessed, though not unwelcome. He nodded politely in her direction before examining a collection of vintage fishing lures. After circling back a third time, Michael found himself face to face with the girl, who had approached with unexpected boldness while he examined a set of old nautical maps. "You've come back 3 times," she observed clinically, adjusting her glasses. "Are you looking for something specific?" Her directness, devoid of the artificial polish adults often used, caught Michael off guard. "Just browsing," he replied, oddly compelled to explain himself to this solemn child. "Well, if you're interested in special things," she continued, "I can show you our most special treasure." Without waiting for his response, she turned and walked to a small wooden cabinet behind the main display. From inside, she withdrew an ornate wooden music box with mother-of-pearl inlay, forming delicate floral patterns across its lid. The craftsmanship was exquisite, clearly dating from an era when such items were made by skilled hands rather than machines. "Grandma says it has magic for the right person," she explained, carefully placing it in his hands. "It's been waiting for somebody special." The box felt unexpectedly heavy, solid in a way modern replicas weren't. Michael turned it over gently, noting the quality of the wood and the intricate brass hinges that had developed a patina with age. "Emma, don't bother the gentleman," the grandmother called softly from her chair. "I'm not bothering him, Grandma," the girl, Emma, replied confidently. "He came back 3 times. That means he's interested." Her brother approached cautiously, positioning himself slightly between Michael and the music box, as if ready to catch it should this stranger drop their treasure. "I'm Ethan," he introduced himself with formal gravity. "That box is our most valuable item. It's very old and still works." Michael carefully opened the lid. Though no melody played, it needed winding, he supposed. The interior was lined with faded burgundy velvet, meticulously preserved, despite its age. "How much is it?" he asked, surprised by his own interest in the object. The twins exchanged a quick glance, a silent communication passing between them. $100, Ethan stated firmly, clearly prepared to defend this valuation. Michael considered the children before him, their careful manners, their obvious concern for their grandmother, their determination to help with her medical bills. Without hesitation, he reached for his wallet and withdrew 5 crisp $100 bills. "Will this help?" he asked simply. Emma's eyes widened behind her glasses. "But sir," she whispered, "that's too much money." "Some things are worth more than their price tag," Michael replied, the words emerging spontaneously. "But you have to get change," Ethan insisted, his sense of fairness clearly troubled by this transaction. "Consider it an investment in your grandmother's health," Michael said softly, ensuring the elderly woman couldn't overhear. "The music box is worth exactly this much to me." As Ethan reluctantly accepted the money, tucking it carefully into their cash box, Michael heard a soft gasp from the grandmother. When he glanced up, she quickly composed her expression, but not before he caught something that looked strangely like recognition in her eyes. "Thank you for taking care of our treasure," Emma said solemnly, wrapping the music box in tissue paper before placing it in a paper bag. "Grandma says treasures always find their right homes eventually." As Michael walked away with the music box tucked securely under his arm, he couldn't explain the strange sense of rightness that settled over him. For the first time in longer than he could remember, he'd acted on pure instinct rather than calculated advantage, and somehow it felt more significant than any multi-million-dollar deal he'd ever closed. Evening found Michael sitting at the desk in his hotel room, the music box centered before him in a pool of lamplight. Outside, the harbor lights twinkled against darkening water, but his attention remained fixed on his curious purchase. He'd spent the afternoon wandering the town, the paper bag containing the music box held carefully under his arm. The $500 meant nothing to him financially, less than he'd spend on a business dinner in Seattle. Yet the transaction lingered in his mind. The twins' earnest faces, the grandmother's strange reaction, his own inexplicable attachment to an object he'd just acquired. Now, in the quiet of his room, Michael examined the music box more carefully. The craftsmanship revealed itself in subtle details: hand-carved roses climbing each corner, tiny mother-of-pearl flowers inlaid with precision. The wood itself polished to a soft glow by decades of handling. This wasn't merely an antique. It was an heirloom, the kind of object passed through generations. He found the winding key underneath and turned it gently until resistance indicated it was fully wound. When he opened the lid, a delicate melody filled the room, hauntingly familiar though he couldn't place it. The notes stirred something in his memory, a half-remembered fragment from early childhood. As the melody played, Michael's fingers traced the box's contours, appreciating the seamless joinery of its construction. Near the bottom edge, his fingertips detected an almost imperceptible seam that seemed out of place with the overall design. Curiosity piqued, he examined it more closely under the desk lamp. The seam formed a perfect rectangle on the bottom panel, too precise to be a flaw, too deliberate to be accidental. Heart suddenly racing, Michael realized he was looking at a false bottom, a hidden compartment concealed within the music box's design. He hesitated, momentarily uncertain. This secret space had remained undiscovered by the twins and their grandmother, or had it? Perhaps they knew exactly what the box contained and had decided to part with it anyway, or perhaps the grandmother's gasped recognition had been about something else entirely. Setting aside his speculations, Michael carefully pressed the edge of the panel. It resisted briefly before releasing with a soft click. Inside the shallow compartment lay a small packet of papers, carefully wrapped in protective tissue, and a faded photograph in a clear protective sleeve. With unexpected reverence, he lifted the photograph first. It showed a young woman, perhaps 20, with wind-tousled auburn hair and a tentative smile. She stood at what he recognized as the harbor overlook, cradling an infant wrapped in a blue blanket. Something about her eyes, their distinctive shape, the particular shade of gray-blue, struck a chord of recognition that made his hands tremble slightly. Michael turned the photograph over. Written in faded blue ink was a simple message: Elizabeth and Michael, Portland Point, 1984. His own name, his birth year, a woman who had his eyes. The realization hit him with physical force. This wasn't just any photograph. This was his birth mother holding him as an infant. After a lifetime of vague wonderings easily pushed aside, here was concrete evidence of his origins, appearing in the most unexpected way. With unsteady fingers, Michael carefully unwrapped the packet of papers. They were letters, dating from 1984 to 2005, arranged chronologically with meticulous care. He opened the earliest one, dated just weeks after his birth. Dearest Martha, it began in careful handwriting. I can't thank you enough for helping arrange everything. The adoption agency says Michael will go to a good family with opportunities I could never provide. Dr. Bennett and his wife seem kind in the photographs. They'll give him the education and stability he deserves. Some days I can barely breathe through the pain of giving him up, but I know this is the right choice. I'm only 17, with no family support and no prospects. Please keep the photograph safe in the music box until someday, if he ever comes looking for his roots. With love and gratitude, Elizabeth. Michael spread the letters across the bed, each one a piece of a puzzle he hadn't known existed. His birth mother had named him, had loved him, had made what she believed was the right choice. The letters continued through the years, addressed to someone named Martha, clearly a close friend or confidant. They documented Elizabeth watching his life from a distance, his high school graduation announcement she'd found in the local paper, news of his early success in technology, clippings about his company going public. The final letter, dated 2005, simply read, Martha, the doctors say it's spreading. If Michael ever returns to Portland and seems to be searching, please help him find whatever he's looking for. The music box was always meant to be his inheritance, the one thing of value I can leave him. All my love, Elizabeth. Michael sat back, overwhelmed by emotions he rarely allowed himself to experience. His birth mother had never truly abandoned him. She had watched over him from afar, had cared enough to document his life, had wanted him to know his origins if he ever sought them. And Martha, the elderly woman at the antique stall, the twins' grandmother, must be the same Martha from the letters. She had recognized him not as a wealthy stranger, but as Elizabeth's son. The twins had sold him, unwittingly, the key to his own history. Michael looked again at the photograph, studying the young woman who had given him life and then made the painful choice to give him opportunity instead of keeping him in her struggling circumstances. For the first time, he saw his own features reflected in another's face, the shape of his eyes, the set of his jaw, the particular angle of his smile. He wasn't ready to sleep, not with these revelations spinning through his mind. Instead, he carefully repacked the letters and photograph into the music box and reached for his laptop. He had research to do, starting with finding the exact address of Martha Cooper. Sunday morning found Michael standing outside a modest blue cottage on the outskirts of Portland. A stone path led through a well-tended garden where late-blooming flowers still added splashes of color. Wind chimes tinkled softly from the porch overhang, and a recently installed wheelchair ramp ran alongside the front steps. He clutched the music box in his hands, uncertainty making him hesitate where business decisions never would. The online search had been simple enough. Martha Cooper, 68, lived just 3 miles from downtown. Her late husband had been a respected high school teacher, and she had operated an antique store until her health began declining 2 years ago. What the internet couldn't tell him was why she had sold him the very item that would reveal their connection, or whether she had recognized him when he approached her stall. Had she been watching him his entire life, just as his birth mother had? Had the twins' earnest sales pitch been entirely innocent, or part of some orchestrated encounter? Before he could reconsider, Michael walked purposefully to the front door and knocked. Long seconds passed before he heard slow footsteps approaching. The door opened to reveal Martha Cooper, looking smaller somehow without the busy market surrounding her. She wore a simple cardigan over a floral dress, her white hair neatly arranged, her eyes clear and intelligent, despite the fatigue evident in her face. No surprise registered in her expression as she took in Michael standing on her porch, music box in hand. Instead, a quiet acceptance seemed to settle over her features. "I wondered how long it would take you to find the compartment," she said simply. The confirmation that she had known, had expected this moment, momentarily robbed Michael of his prepared questions. In their place came an unexpected surge of emotion, not anger as he might have anticipated, but a profound sense of connection to this stranger who wasn't a stranger at all. "You knew who I was at the market," he said finally. Not a question. Martha nodded, opening the door wider. "Come in, Michael. I expect you have questions that deserve proper answers, not porch conversation." The cottage interior was warm and welcoming, filled with antiques that suggested both professional knowledge and personal attachment. Photos lined the walls and shelves, many featuring the twins at various ages, and several showing a woman with auburn hair, who had to be their mother. Martha led him to a small sitting area, moving slowly but with dignity. "Tea?" she offered, her hands trembling slightly as she reached for a kettle. "Please, let me," Michael said, taking it from her with gentle insistence. Once they were settled with steaming mugs before them, Martha met his gaze directly. "You read the letters?" "Yes." Michael placed the music box on the coffee table between them. "Elizabeth was my birth mother." "She was my best friend since we were children," Martha said softly. "We grew up together on the same street, shared every secret. When she found herself pregnant at 17, frightened and alone, I was the only one she trusted." "And you helped arrange my adoption?" Martha nodded. Her parents had disowned her when they discovered the pregnancy. The boy involved, not much more than a child himself, had already left for college, unaware of the situation. "Elizabeth wanted you to have opportunities she couldn't provide." Michael absorbed this, matching it against the letters he'd read. "The photographs in the music box, the clippings about my career. She tracked my life. From a distance, yes. She never wanted to disrupt your life or complicate things for your adoptive parents, whom she genuinely respected. But she needed to know you were well, that her sacrifice had been worthwhile." A question formed in Michael's mind, one he wasn't sure he wanted answered. "Is she—" he began. "Elizabeth passed away 5 years ago," Martha said gently. "Cancer, It was quick, at least. Her last wish was that if you ever returned to Portland and seemed to be searching, I would help you find whatever answers you needed. The finality of it struck Michael with unexpected force. He had come so close, just 5 years too late, to meeting the woman who had given him life. The possibility he hadn't even known he wanted was suddenly, irrevocably gone. The music box was her deliberate message to you, Martha continued. She always said that if fate ever brought you back to Portland, the box would find its way to you. But you sold it, Michael said, unable to keep a note of accusation from his voice, through children who had no idea what they were selling. Martha's eyes, so like Elizabeth's in their directness, held his steadily. Would you have believed me if I had approached you directly, a stranger claiming to know your birth mother? Or would you have suspected a scheme targeting your wealth? The question gave Michael pause. His success had made him cautious, suspicious of unexpected connections and coincidences. Even now, part of him analyzed the situation for potential manipulation. The twins don't know, do they? He asked finally. Emma and Ethan know only that the music box was special to their mother, Martha replied. They offered to sell it because they've overheard my conversations with doctors about experimental treatments not covered by insurance. Another piece clicked into place. Their mother, Claire, is Elizabeth's daughter from her marriage several years after your birth, Martha confirmed. Your half-sister. Michael sat back, momentarily overwhelmed. Not only had he discovered his birth mother's identity, but he had a half-sister. And the twins, those solemn, earnest children who had so captivated him, were his niece and nephew. I'd like to see her, he said after a moment. Claire. Martha studied him carefully. She's picking up groceries. She'll be back soon. She leaned forward slightly. But Michael, you should know. Claire doesn't know about you. Elizabeth never told her she had given up a child before her. Before Michael could respond, the sound of a car door slamming came from outside, followed by footsteps on the porch. Martha's expression shifted to one of gentle warning. That would be Claire now, she said softly. Are you ready? Michael straightened, facing the door with a mixture of anticipation and apprehension that no business negotiation had ever inspired. For the first time in his adult life, he had no strategy, no prepared talking points, no data-driven approach to what was about to unfold. He had only the truth and the hope that it would be enough. The front door opened, followed by the rustle of grocery bags and a woman's voice calling, Mom, they were out of your favorite yogurt, but I found that tea you like. Claire Cooper stepped into the living room and froze, grocery bags clutched against her chest. Her gaze darted from her mother to the stranger sitting in their living room, then to the familiar music box on the coffee table between them. Michael stood instinctively, years of social training taking over where words failed him. Claire was perhaps in her early 30s, with chestnut hair pulled back in a practical ponytail and the same distinctive eyes he had seen in the photograph of Elizabeth, the same eyes he saw in his own mirror each morning. Claire, Martha said, her voice calm despite the tension filling the room, this is Michael Bennett. Claire set the groceries down carefully, her movements deliberate, as if buying time. The tech mogul? She asked, confusion evident in her voice. Mom, what's going on? Perhaps you should sit down, dear, Martha suggested gently. I'd rather stand, thank you. Claire's posture shifted subtly, becoming protective. Why is he here? And why does he have Mom's music box? Michael noticed how she referred to Elizabeth as Mom. Of course she would, having grown up with her, known her, been raised by her in all the ways he hadn't. A strange pang of something like jealousy, mixed with wonder, passed through him. The twins sold it to me at the market yesterday, he explained, finding his voice. I didn't know its significance then. They what? Claire's expression shifted to dismay. They know that's not for sale. It was Mom's. She broke off, turning to Martha. Grandma, why didn't you stop them? Martha reached for her daughter's hand. Claire, sit down, please. There's something you need to know, something I should have told you long ago. Something in her mother's tone must have reached Claire, because she sank slowly into the armchair opposite Michael, though her posture remained tense, ready for flight. The music box has always been part of our family story, Martha began carefully. Your mother treasured it because it connected her to someone she had to let go. Claire's gaze shifted between them, confusion giving way to dawning comprehension. What are you saying? Martha took a deep breath. Before she met your father, when she was very young, Elizabeth had another child, a son she placed for adoption. The silence that followed was profound. Claire stared at her mother, then at Michael, understanding blooming in her expression. You're saying he's your half-brother, Martha confirmed gently. Michael is Elizabeth's firstborn. Claire's hand went to her throat, fingers touching a delicate chain that disappeared beneath her sweater's neckline. That's not possible. Mom would have told me. She wanted to, Martha said, many times. But your father, he couldn't accept her continued connection to her first child. It became a condition of their marriage that she never speak of it. Dad made her keep this secret? Claire's voice held a complex mixture of disbelief and growing anger. Even from me? After the divorce, she considered telling you many times, Martha explained. But by then, you were a teenager, and she worried how it would affect you, learning about a sibling who had been given away before you were born. Claire turned to Michael, really seeing him now. Did you know about us? Michael shook his head. Not until last night. I found letters and a photograph hidden in the music box. Letters your mother wrote to Martha over the years. Letters about you, Claire said softly, understanding. That's why she was so protective of that box. Martha nodded. Elizabeth followed Michael's career from a distance. She was so proud of what you became, she added, looking at Michael, though she never felt she had the right to make contact. Claire pulled the chain from beneath her sweater, revealing a small charm, a miniature replica of the music box. Mom gave me this on my 16th birthday, she said, touching it gently. She said it represented a precious melody we couldn't hear yet, but would someday. The poignancy of the metaphor struck Michael deeply. His birth mother had found a way to connect her children symbolically, even when she couldn't do so openly. Claire studied him with new awareness. You have her eyes, she said finally. I always thought the twins got their eye shape from Mom's side, but they got it from you too, didn't they? Michael hadn't considered this genetic connection to the twins, the biological link that made them family beyond their chance encounter. I suppose they did, he said. A slow softening transformed Claire's expression. This is overwhelming. Yesterday you were just some successful stranger. Today you're my brother. Half-brother, Michael corrected automatically, then immediately regretted the clarification when he saw her expression falter. I'm sorry, corporate precision habit. I didn't mean to sound distancing. Surprisingly, Claire laughed, a short, incredulous sound. You sound like Emma when she corrects us, precise to a fault. The comparison to his niece created an unexpected warmth in Michael's chest. She's quite remarkable, both of them are. They're good kids, Claire agreed, pride momentarily overriding her shock. Then her expression grew troubled again. I need to understand why they sold Mom's music box. They know how special it is to our family. They were trying to help, Martha explained gently. They overheard us discussing the medical treatments, the ones insurance won't cover. Understanding dawned on Claire's face, followed by dismay. Oh, Mom, they were trying to raise money for your treatments? Why didn't you tell me they knew about that? You have enough burdens without worrying about the twins worrying, Martha said simply. Michael watched this exchange, piecing together the family dynamics before him. Claire was struggling financially, working multiple jobs to support her children and help with her mother's medical expenses. Martha was protecting her daughter from additional stress. The twins were trying to protect them both. And he, worth billions, with resources that could solve these problems instantly, had been completely unaware of their existence until yesterday. Claire, he said carefully, I know this is sudden, and I'm still processing it myself. But I'd like to help, with Martha's medical expenses at the very least. Claire straightened, pride flashing in her eyes, Elizabeth's eyes. We've managed on our own so far. I know, Michael said, recognizing the independence that likely ran in their shared blood. But that's what family does, isn't it? They help each other. Family. The word hung between them, a concept he'd referenced in countless corporate speeches about the company family, but had never truly experienced in its most basic, meaningful form. Claire didn't answer immediately, but something in her expression shifted, suggesting not acceptance exactly, but openness to possibility. "The twins will be home from their friend's house soon," she said finally. "We should figure out how to explain this to them." It wasn't an embrace or instant acceptance. It wasn't rejection either. It was a cautious step forward, an invitation to remain, to be present when his niece and nephew returned. For Michael Bennett, who had built empires from opportunities others missed, it was enough. For now. The sound of children's voices preceded them, Emma's measured tones explaining something scientific, contrasting with Ethan's more animated responses. Michael found himself smiling at the familiar dynamic he'd already recognized in their brief market interaction. Claire rose nervously, straightening her sweater in an unconscious gesture. "Act normal," Martha murmured. "They'll sense something's wrong if we're all sitting here like we're at a funeral." Michael appreciated her practical approach, though acting normal seemed impossible in these circumstances. He had just discovered his sister and was about to meet his niece and nephew, properly this time, with knowledge of their relationship. The front door burst open, and the twins swept in with the boundless energy of 8-year-olds, only to stop short at the sight of the adults arranged in the living room. Emma's eyes widened behind her glasses, while Ethan's gaze darted suspiciously between the adults. "The music box man," Emma said, recognizing Michael immediately. "Why is he here?" Ethan asked directly, his protective instincts visibly engaging as he stepped slightly in front of his sister. Claire moved forward, placing a reassuring hand on each child's shoulder. "Emma, Ethan, this is Mr. Bennett. We need to talk about something important." "Is it about the music box?" Emma asked, guilt flashing across her face. "We were trying to help Grandma." "I know you were, sweetheart," Claire assured her, "and that was very thoughtful, even though we've talked about asking before selling family treasures." "Are you mad at us?" Ethan questioned, his voice smaller than his usual confident tone. "No, not mad," Claire said, guiding them toward the sofa. "But something unexpected happened because of the music box, and we need to explain it to you." The twins sat down obediently, though their postures remained alert with curiosity and mild apprehension. Emma's gaze kept returning to Michael, studying him with the analytical focus he was beginning to recognize as characteristic. Martha leaned forward in her chair. "Do you remember when we talked about how families are like puzzles? How sometimes pieces get separated but still belong together?" Emma nodded. "Like in my book about adoption, where the baby grows in one mommy's tummy, but then becomes part of a different family." Michael was impressed by her comprehension of such a complex concept. Ethan looked less certain, his brow furrowed, as he tried to connect this to the current situation. "What does that have to do with the music box man?" he asked, cutting to the chase in a way that reminded Michael of himself in business meetings. Claire took a deep breath. "This is your Uncle Michael," she said simply. "He's my brother, but we just found out today. He didn't know about us before, and we didn't know about him." The directness of her approach caught Michael by surprise, but he admired her straightforwardness. Children deserved honest answers, even to complicated questions. A profound silence followed her announcement. Emma's eyes widened further as she processed this information, while Ethan's suspicious expression deepened. "If you're Mom's brother," Ethan asked, with the unfiltered directness of childhood, "where have you been? And if you're rich like Grandma said, why haven't you helped her before?" "Ethan," Claire admonished gently. "It's a fair question," Michael said, respecting the boy's protective instinct. He shifted to face the twins directly. "I didn't know about any of you until yesterday. Your grandmother, my mother, had me when she was very young, before she was ready to be a parent. She made the difficult choice to let another family adopt me." "Like in my book," Emma said softly. "Yes, exactly like that," Michael confirmed. "I grew up with different parents in a different city. Your mom didn't know about me either, until today." "But how did you find us?" Emma asked, her analytical mind working through the puzzle. Michael carefully lifted the music box from the coffee table. "When you sold me this, I discovered a hidden compartment inside with old letters and a photograph of my birth mother, your grandmother, Elizabeth." Emma approached cautiously, studying Michael's face with newfound context. "Your eyes look like Mom's," she observed. "And mine." The simple observation, delivered with a child's unvarnished honesty, touched something deep in Michael. This physical connection, these shared features that had passed from Elizabeth to both her children and then to Emma, created a tangible link that paperwork and explanations couldn't convey. Ethan remained more cautious, his protective nature evident in his reserved posture. "So you're our uncle," he stated, processing this information. "A real uncle, not like Uncle Jack, who's just Mom's friend." "Yes, a real uncle," Michael confirmed, feeling the weight of that title settle on him with unexpected significance. "Do you know how to play catch?" Ethan asked suddenly, the question seemingly random, but clearly part of his evaluation process. Michael smiled. "I do, though I might be a bit rusty." "Dad used to play catch with us before he moved away," Ethan explained matter-of-factly. "Uncles should know how to play catch." The casual mention of their absent father, combined with Ethan's straightforward expectations of what uncles should do, provided Michael with more context about the family dynamics. Claire's pained expression at the mention of the twins' father didn't escape his notice. Emma had inched closer, still examining Michael with thoughtful concentration. "Thank you for seeing us," she said finally, the mature phrasing incongruous with her small stature. "What do you mean?" Michael asked, genuinely curious. "Most grown-ups think we're the same person," she explained. "They call us the twins, like we're one thing. But you noticed we're different. You got me the rainbow key necklace, and Ethan the stars one." Michael was momentarily confused until he realized she was imagining future events, projecting her expectations of what having an uncle might mean. The mention of necklaces, however, sparked an idea he filed away for later. "You're both extraordinary in completely different ways," he told her sincerely. Martha watched this exchange with quiet satisfaction, while Claire seemed to be holding her breath, gauging her children's reactions with maternal concern. "Does this mean you're staying?" Ethan asked, getting to the heart of the matter again. "Or are you going back to being rich somewhere else?" The question, innocent yet profound, crystallized the choice facing Michael. Return to his empty success in Seattle, or remain to explore these newfound connections? A week ago, there would have been no question. His company would have taken priority without a second thought. Now, looking at these children, his sister's children, his niece and nephew, his family, the answer seemed both terrifying and obvious. "I'd like to stay," he said simply, "if that's okay with all of you." Emma nodded decisively. "That's acceptable," she declared, unconsciously echoing his earlier thoughts with a phrase that sounded charmingly adult, coming from her small frame. Ethan remained more guarded, but his slight nod suggested willingness to give this unexpected uncle a chance. Claire's expression softened with what might have been relief or gratitude, or both. For the first time in his adult life, Michael had made a major decision based not on spreadsheets or strategic advantage, but on the simple human desire to belong. Michael sat at the desk in his hotel room, staring at his open laptop. The screen displayed an urgent email from his board chairman requesting confirmation of his return for Wednesday's critical investor meeting in Singapore. Beside the computer lay his phone, which had been buzzing with increasing frequency throughout the day, Sarah trying to reach him, executives seeking decisions, the relentless machinery of his company demanding his attention. Spread across the bed were the photographs he'd printed from his phone, snapshots taken during his second dinner with the Cooper family last night. Emma proudly showing him her science project. Ethan cautiously demonstrating his baseball card collection. Claire laughing at something Martha had said, seemingly ordinary family moments that felt extraordinary to a man who had built an empire, but never a home. The music box sat open on the nightstand, its melody having become a strangely comforting background to his thoughts. In just 3 days, this simple object had upended everything he had believed about himself and his priorities. His phone buzzed again, Sarah's name flashing on the screen for the 5th time that morning. "Michael Bennett," he answered, his standard greeting automatic. "Finally," Sarah sighed, relief evident in her voice. "I've been trying to reach you all weekend. The Singapore investors are getting nervous about your extended absence, and the quarterly projections need your approval before tomorrow's market open." the familiar rhythm of business crises that had structured his life for 2 decades. Once, these urgent matters would have sent him immediately to his laptop, canceling all other plans without hesitation. "I'll review the projections this afternoon," he promised, finding himself reluctant to fully re-engage with that world. "And your flight back?" "The jet is fueled and ready whenever you give the word." Michael hesitated, glancing again at the photographs. "I'll get back to you on that." "Is everything all right?" Sarah asked, genuine concern breaking through her professional efficiency. In 5 years as his assistant, she had never known him to be indecisive about business matters. "Yes," he assured her. "I've just discovered some family matters that need attention." "Family?" The surprise in her voice was understandable. In all their years working together, he had never mentioned family beyond the occasional reference to his deceased adoptive parents. "It's complicated," Michael said. "I'll explain when I return. For now, please clear my schedule through Friday." After ending the call, Michael opened his email to find a message from Claire containing Martha's medical records and treatment options. He had insisted on helping with her health care, and after initial reluctance, Claire had agreed to share the information. The experimental treatment Martha needed wasn't covered by insurance, a targeted immunotherapy that showed promising results for her condition, but carried a $175,000 price tag. To most people, including Claire, this represented an insurmountable financial hurdle. To Michael, it was less than what he spent annually on corporate jet maintenance. Yet Claire had been hesitant to accept his help, her pride and independence evident in her careful responses. "We're not looking for handouts," she had said quietly after the twins went to bed. "Family isn't about money." Her words had stayed with him. Throughout his career, money had been his primary measure of value and success. The notion that the most important connections might exist entirely separate from wealth was both foreign and strangely liberating. His phone chimed with a text message from Ethan. "My baseball game is Thursday at 4. Uncle Mike can come if he wants." The simple invitation, clearly sent with Claire's help, touched him unexpectedly. Uncle Mike, a title he had never anticipated, conveying a relationship he had never expected to have. Another email notification appeared. The real estate agent he had contacted that morning, sending listings for available properties in Portland. On impulse, he had requested information on homes near Martha's cottage, telling himself it was merely exploratory. Michael stood and walked to the window, looking out at the harbor where fishing boats bobbed gently in the autumn sunshine. Portland was nothing like Seattle, smaller, slower, less impressive by conventional standards. Yet in 3 days, he had experienced more genuine connection here than in years of networking events and business dinners in the city where he had built his fortune. The Singapore meeting represented more than just another business commitment. It symbolized the life he had constructed, a life of achievements rather than relationships, of success measured in acquisitions rather than connections. Missing it would signal a fundamental shift in priorities that would reverberate through his company and reputation. Michael returned to his laptop and opened a new email addressed to his Chief Operations Officer, Thomas Chen. Thomas had been with the company from the beginning, the one executive Michael trusted implicitly. "Thomas," he wrote, "I need you to handle the Singapore presentation. Something more important has come up." He paused, fingers hovering over the keyboard. This decision would raise questions, concern, perhaps even trigger a minor stock fluctuation when news broke that he had missed such a significant meeting. A week ago, such considerations would have been paramount. Now, weighed against Emma's invitation to her school science fair, Ethan's baseball game, and Martha's need for treatment, the corporate consequences seemed suddenly less consequential. He finished the email with specific instructions for Thomas and hit send before he could reconsider. Then he called the hotel's front desk and extended his stay indefinitely. Next, he phoned his financial advisor, instructing him to establish a medical trust for Martha Cooper with an initial deposit of $500,000, enough to cover her experimental treatment and any potential complications or follow-up care. "Set it up with complete discretion," he added, knowing Claire's pride might make direct financial assistance difficult for her to accept. Finally, he called the real estate agent and scheduled viewings of 3 properties for tomorrow morning. Each action represented a step away from the life he had built and towards something he couldn't yet fully define but felt increasingly certain he needed. As evening approached, Michael closed his laptop and gathered the photographs from the bed. Instead of reviewing quarterly projections or preparing for investor questions, he found himself driving back to Martha's cottage for dinner, a simple family meal that now seemed more compelling than any executive function he had ever attended. The choice wasn't yet permanent, he told himself. He wasn't abandoning his company or responsibilities. He was simply reordering priorities that had been misaligned for too long. But as he pulled into the driveway and saw Emma waving enthusiastically through the window while Ethan waited more reservedly at the door, Michael recognized the truth he had been circling for days. He had already made his decision. 6 months later, sunlight streamed through the tall windows of Michael's home office, illuminating a space that perfectly captured his new life balance. One wall featured sleek monitors displaying real-time company data and global market trends. The opposite wall showcased framed children's artwork, Emma's detailed scientific illustrations, and Ethan's bold, action-filled drawings. A large mahogany desk housed cutting-edge technology, while comfortable window seats invited conversation rather than intimidated visitors. But, Uncle Mike, the graph should be purple, not blue, Emma insisted, her serious face filling one of the video conference screens. Purple shows it's important. Michael adjusted the presentation slide, hiding his amusement as his chief financial officer and 3 senior VPs waited patiently on the other displays. Is this better? Emma nodded approvingly. Much better. People will pay more attention now. Emma has been reviewing our quarterly presentation visuals, Michael explained to his Seattle team, who had grown accustomed to occasional appearances by the twins during video meetings. She has strong opinions about effective color theory. The profit projections make more sense this way, Ethan added earnestly, leaning into frame. People like pictures better than numbers. Thomas Chen, now effectively Michael's co-CEO, nodded with surprising seriousness. Excellent point, Ethan. We'll incorporate that feedback. The easy interaction between his corporate team and his newfound family still occasionally struck Michael as surreal. 2 worlds he'd once believed could never intersect, now blending in unexpected harmony. As the twins wandered off to finish their homework, Michael completed the strategy session with his executives. The company hadn't suffered from his physical absence as many had predicted. If anything, delegating day-to-day operations had strengthened his leadership team while allowing him to focus on broader vision and innovation, the aspects of the business that had excited him from the beginning. Portland branch office expansion plans look good, Thomas concluded. Claire's community outreach proposals are particularly impressive. Claire's voice called from downstairs. Emma! Ethan! Grandma's treatment session is finished. Time to go pick her up. Gotta run, Michael told his team. Family transportation duty calls. I'll review the final presentation before tomorrow's board meeting. After ending the call, Michael descended the stairs of the historic colonial home he'd purchased 3 months ago. Located just 2 blocks from Martha's cottage, the 4-bedroom house had been extensively renovated to combine modern convenience with traditional charm. The kitchen gleamed with professional-grade appliances that Claire was gradually learning to navigate, while the backyard featured both Emma's container garden experiments and Ethan's baseball practice area. Claire stood at the door, car keys in hand, her appearance subtly transformed from their first meeting. The constant exhaustion had faded from her face, replaced by a confident energy as she balanced part-time work managing Michael's Portland Community Foundation with her role as a mother. Her clothes, while still practical, were of noticeably better quality. Small upgrades she had gradually accepted without the defensiveness that had initially characterized her response to Michael's assistance. Board meeting run long? She asked, recognizing the look of someone transitioning between professional and personal modes. Emma had some critical feedback on our presentation design, Michael replied with a smile. Apparently, blue graphs demonstrate insufficient commitment to our message. Claire laughed, a free, unencumbered sound that had become more frequent as financial pressures eased. Yesterday, she informed her science teacher that his periodic table display lacked visual hierarchy. I got a very confused email about it. The twins bounded down the stairs, backpacks bouncing. Emma's contained books well above her grade level, while Ethan's bulged with sports equipment alongside his homework. Can we get ice cream after picking up Grandma? Ethan asked hopefully. Doctor? Morris said celebration is important for recovery milestones. Nice try, Claire responded, though her expression suggested the ice cream was already part of the plan. Grandma's latest scan results deserve some recognition. Martha's treatment had progressed better than the doctors had initially predicted. The experimental immunotherapy, combined with conventional approaches, had reduced her tumor markers significantly. While not a complete remission, her condition had stabilized enough that she had recently moved from her cottage into the downstairs guest suite Michael had specifically designed for her needs. "I'll join you," Michael said, grabbing his jacket. "The Singapore contracts can wait an hour." As they piled into Claire's new mid-sized SUV, a practical upgrade from her previous struggling sedan that she had finally accepted after her old car broke down irreparably, Michael reflected on how naturally this new routine had established itself. 6 months ago, he would have prioritized international contracts over family ice cream, regardless of the circumstances. Now, he recognized that the contracts would still be there after celebrating Martha's good scan results, but the moment with his family could never be recaptured. The drive to the treatment center took them past the newly renovated community building where Michael had established the Bennett Cooper Technology Center, a project that combined his business acumen with his desire to create opportunity in his hometown. Local students received free technology education and mentorship, with scholarships available for those showing particular promise. "The robotics team is ready for Saturday's competition," Claire informed him, pride evident in her voice. She had discovered an unexpected talent for program development, creating curricula that engaged children across various learning styles. "Emma designed an additional stabilization component for their entry," Michael replied. "It's being 3D printed at the lab right now." "And I'm helping with the team cheer," Ethan added, not to be outdone by his sister's contribution. At the treatment center, they found Martha sitting in the waiting area, her tablet open to research articles about her condition. Though thinner than when Michael had first met her, her eyes remained bright with the same intelligence and determination that had guided her through decades of protecting his mother's secrets. "There's my favorite people," she greeted them, accepting Ethan's enthusiastic hug and Emma's more measured but equally affectionate embrace. "Grandma, Uncle Mike said we could get ice cream to celebrate your good scan," Emma announced, employing selective hearing regarding who had actually authorized the treat. Martha's knowing glance at Michael and Claire acknowledged this manipulation with amusement. "Well, if Uncle Mike said so, we certainly should." As they walked toward the car, Martha's pace slower but steady, she linked her arm through Michael's. "Elizabeth would be so happy," she said quietly, just for him to hear, "seeing her children and grandchildren together like this." The simple statement, delivered without sentiment or drama, nonetheless captured the profound transformation of the past 6 months. From strangers connected by a music box to a family bound by choice as much as blood. Later that evening, as Michael helped Emma with her science project, while Ethan practiced catching in the backyard with Claire, Martha observed from her comfortable chair by the window. The music box sat on the mantel, now a visible symbol of the melody that had finally found its full expression in the family gathered beneath its watchful presence. Golden afternoon light filled the living room of Michael's home, where birthday decorations created a festive atmosphere. Streamers draped from ceiling beams and photographs chronicling Michael's life journey lined the walls, business achievements interspersed with newer family snapshots. A hand-painted banner, Emma and Ethan's creation, proclaimed, "Happy 40th birthday, Uncle Mike," in bold, colorful letters. Michael stood surrounded by an unlikely gathering. His core Seattle team mingled comfortably with his Portland family, worlds converging in a way that would have seemed impossible a year earlier. Sarah Chen, his executive assistant, chatted animatedly with Claire about the Community Foundation's latest initiatives. Thomas was demonstrating a smartphone feature to an enthralled Ethan, while Emma seriously discussed cloud computing with the company's lead developer. "Quite a different birthday from what we'd planned," Sarah commented, approaching Michael with a glass of sparkling cider. "Remember that Tokyo reservation I made last year? The exclusive restaurant that required booking 12 months in advance?" Michael chuckled, recalling his previous birthday paradigm. Expensive yet ultimately forgettable celebrations that measured success by exclusivity rather than meaning. "This is better," he said simply. Claire dimmed the lights as Martha wheeled in a cake adorned with blazing candles. Unlike the professionally crafted desserts that had marked previous birthdays, this one showed the charming imperfections of homemade effort. slightly uneven frosting, and hand-piped decorations that nonetheless represented genuine care. "Make a wish," Emma instructed solemnly. Michael surveyed the room, his employees who had adapted to his transformed leadership style, his sister, who had opened her life to include him, his niece and nephew, who had accepted him with children's remarkable resilience, and Martha, who had protected his history until he was ready to discover it. What could he possibly wish for that wasn't already present in this room? After cake and presents, including a surprisingly thoughtful wireless charging station from his executive team and a carefully crafted scrapbook from the twins, Martha approached Michael with an unexpected addition. "There's one more gift," she said, her voice catching slightly. From behind her chair, she produced a small wooden box that matched the music box in design and craftsmanship. The room quieted as Martha placed it in Michael's hands. "Elizabeth made me promise to give you this when the time was right," she explained. "I've kept it safe all these years, waiting for this moment." The box featured the same intricate carving as the music box, though smaller and designed to hold documents rather than play melodies. Michael opened it carefully, aware of the significance this moment held for Martha, who had carried his mother's secrets for decades. Inside lay a single envelope, the paper yellowed with age, bearing his name in elegant handwriting. The letter was dated the day after his birth. Michael looked to Martha, who nodded encouragement. "It's time," she said simply. With careful fingers, he opened the envelope and unfolded the letter inside. "My dearest Michael," it began. "As I write this, you are just 1 day old, sleeping peacefully in the hospital nursery. Tomorrow, I will place you in the arms of your adoptive parents, the hardest thing I will ever do. Dr. and Mrs. Bennett seem kind and loving, exactly the sort of parents I wish I could be for you right now. I want you to know that this choice comes from love, not from its absence. At 17, with no family support and no means to provide the life you deserve, I'm giving you the only gift within my power, opportunity. My hope is that someday you might understand. Perhaps you will never read these words. Perhaps our paths will never cross again. But Martha has promised to keep this letter and the music box that was my grandmother's, in case you ever find your way back to Portland asking questions about your beginnings. Through the years, I've watched your journey from a distance, your high school graduation, your college achievements, your remarkable business success. I attended your MIT commencement, standing far back in the crowd, so proud I could barely breathe. I don't know if you'll ever find your way back to where you began, but if you're reading this, you found your way home to the family that has always been waiting for you. The music box was always meant to find its way back to you. It played the lullaby I sang to you before we said goodbye." Michael paused, his vision blurring. Claire moved beside him, a steadying presence as he continued reading. "My fondest wish is that someday you might know Claire and her children, though I haven't found the courage to tell her about you. Family connections have a way of finding their path, sometimes against all odds. Whatever life has brought you, I hope it has included joy, purpose, and love. Know that you were wanted and loved from your very first breath, and that has never changed. All my love, always, your mother, Elizabeth." The room remained silent as Michael carefully folded the letter. Even the twins seemed to understand the gravity of the moment, their usual energy temporarily contained. "She was at my graduation," Michael said finally, the realization striking him deeply. "I never knew." Martha nodded. "She wouldn't approach you, didn't want to disrupt your life, but she couldn't bear to miss it." "She would have loved seeing all of us together like this," Claire said softly, tears in her eyes. Emma approached Michael cautiously. "Are you sad, Uncle Mike?" Michael considered the question with the honesty it deserved. "Not sad exactly," he answered. "Maybe wistful that I never met her, but mostly grateful that she set in motion everything that eventually brought us all together." Ethan joined them, his usual exuberance tempered by the moment. "Can we hear the story again? About how we sold you the music box? And how you found the secret compartment," Emma added. "And discovered you were our uncle," Ethan continued. Michael smiled, emotions settling into a bittersweet gratitude. "It's a good story, isn't it?" Claire retrieved the music box from the mantel and placed it beside its companion piece. "Together at last," she said. "Just like us." 1 year after finding the music box, Michael stood with Claire, Martha, and the twins at the harbor, overlook where Elizabeth had once held him as a baby. The photograph from the music box had been carefully framed and now hung in the family room, Elizabeth's legacy acknowledged and honored. Each member of the family added a small memento to a time capsule they had created to mark the anniversary. Emma contributed a scientific drawing, Ethan a baseball card, Claire a small watercolor she had painted, Martha a pressed flower from her garden. Michael added a recording of the music box's melody, digitized, yet still carrying the warmth of its antique mechanism. "Some melodies never end," Michael said as they sealed the capsule. "They just wait for the right moment to be heard again." As they walked back along the harbor path, the twins running ahead while Martha watched from a bench, Claire linked her arm through Michael's in a gesture that had become comfortably familiar. "You know," she said, "for someone who stumbled into our lives because of a random purchase at a weekend market, you've managed to fit in remarkably well." Michael smiled, watching Emma explain something scientific to her brother, who listened with surprising patience. "Nothing random about it," he replied. "That music box was waiting for me all along." Above them, seagulls wheeled against the clear autumn sky, their calls mingling with the twins' laughter and the distant sound of boats returning to harbor, the soundtrack of a life Michael hadn't known he was missing until he found it. The music box that once contained a hidden message now stood proudly displayed in the family home, no longer a secret, but a celebration of connections that had survived time and separation. In finding his birth family, Michael had discovered something far more valuable than all his business success. He had found himself, his history, and his future, all wrapped in the simple melody of belonging. Every family has hidden melodies waiting to be discovered, forgotten connections, untold stories, unexpected bonds. What treasures might be waiting in your family's past? Share this story with someone who might need to hear that it's never too late to find your way home. And subscribe for more stories that remind us that the most valuable discoveries often come when we least expect them, wrapped in the most unassuming packages.